picture this scenario for a second. You are undeniably the most powerful person on the planet.
Right.
You have absolute authority. You can literally snap your fingers and have a feast, a palace, a parade, whatever you want.
Anything.
Yeah, anything. But instead of enjoying any of that, you are sitting in a freezing tent on the edge of the Danube River. You're surrounded by mud, you're exhausted, and you're writing a little note to yourself that basically says, don't let the purple robe dye your soul.
Meaning, don't let the power corrupt you. Don't let the absolute luxury make you soft.
Exactly. So we are talking about Marcus Aurelius today on this deep dive, but we aren't just doing some standard book report on the Meditations.
Oh, no, definitely not.
We are digging into a very specific source today. It's the Introduction to the Meditations by the scholar Marcus Aurelius, and it paints a portrait of Marcus that is, well, honestly, it's pretty heartbreaking.
It really is.
It's not the portrait of this triumphant conqueror. It's the portrait of a man who is barely holding it together.
Yeah. And to get us started, Casaubon uses a phrase to describe Marcus's life that completely stopped me in my tracks when I read it. He says Marcus lived in a mood of strenuous weariness.
Strenuous weariness.
Yeah.
This is such a heavy, loaded phrase. It sounds like burnout, but with, the highest possible stakes.
It fits perfectly, though. It captures the central paradox of his entire life. Marcus was a soul who craved peace. He wanted silence. He just wanted to be a philosopher.
He wanted to be a scholar.
Right. But fate forced him to be a warrior. He spent his life in the coarse clangor of arms, as the source says, ruling an empire, constantly reminding himself that the things he was forced to fight for, the fame, the wealth, the power, were essentially just vanity.
So our mission today is to figure out how he survived that.
Yes.
How did a Roman emperor use philosophy not as some intellectual hobby, but as a literal survival mechanism just to get through the day?
To understand the Meditations, you really have to understand the pressure cooker that created them. And that starts right from his childhood.
Let's rewind to 121 AD. Little Marcus is born, and he wasn't just some random kid who got lucky. He had a serious pedigree.
He did. His birth name was M. Annius Verus, and his family claimed descent from Numa, who was the second king of Rome.
Right.
Now, Numa was legendary for being the most pious of the kings, the guy who established all the Roman religious rites. So from day one, Marcus has this immense, heavy expectation of nobility and religious duty just hanging over his head.
But the thing that really defines his character early on, and this is actually my favorite detail from the source, is his relationship with the Emperor Hadrian. Because Hadrian really took a shine to this kid, didn't he?
He did. Hadrian saw something totally unique in the boy's character. His name was Verus, which means true, but Hadrian playfully nicknamed him Verissimus.
Meaning most truthful.
Exactly.
That is a lot of pressure for a 6-year-old. Here comes the most truthful boy in Rome.
It is, but it speaks volumes. Even as a child, he wasn't playing games. He was serious. And his upbringing reflected that. Even though he was heir to the throne, his education was incredibly strict.
Yeah, I read that.
He was trained in Stoic philosophy early on, and he took it to heart immediately.
And when we say trained, we aren't talking about reading scrolls in a comfy chair. The source mentions he was taught to dress plainly and get this sleep on hard surfaces.
Right. Planks or just the bare floor. He was actively training his body to reject luxury. He avoided softness.
Which is wild for royalty.
And despite having a naturally weak constitution, he was not a naturally strong or robust guy. He pushed himself. He wrestled, he hunted, he even faced down the fiercest boars.
It's the classic rich kid who refuses to act rich trope, but it was his actual life. He was preparing himself for hardship. But what really struck me in the text is how socially isolated this made him. The source spends some time talking about the circus.
Yes, this is a crucial detail for understanding his isolation. You have to understand the social pressure here. Rome wasn't just into chariot racing. The circus was life or death.
The factions, right?
Exactly. The city was split into these rabid factions, the greens, the blues, the whites, the reds.
So kind of like modern sports hooliganism, but dialed up to 11?
Precisely. We are talking actual riots in the stands, people killing each other in the streets over a race result.
Yeah.
It was the heartbeat of the culture. Corruption, obsession, constant noise.
And in the middle of this mania, you have young Marcus, the heir apparent, and he just checks out.
He held himself severely aloof, according to the source. Imagine the discipline that takes. Everyone around you is screaming for the blue team, and you're sitting there stone-faced, thinking about virtue.
Yeah, it alienated people.
It made him a total stranger in his own city.
Which sets the stage perfectly for when he actually gets power. He's serious, he's disciplined, he's a bit of a loner. Then, in 161 AD, Antoninus Pius dies, and Marcus takes the throne.
And here is where the tragedy really begins. Because Marcus immediately makes a decision that changes the structure of the empire. He creates a co-emperor.
Lucius Verus?
Yes. He essentially says, I don't want to rule alone. And he elevates his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, to share the throne. It was an innovation for Rome, but the source calls it a massive mistake.
Because Lucius was, well, he was not exactly Verusmus.
Not even close. It's almost like a buddy cop movie gone wrong.
Right.
While Marcus was staying up late, handling administration and trying to be a good ruler, Lucius was sent east to handle a revolt in Parthia.
And what did Lucius do?
Well, the source says he spent his time in drunkenness and debauchery, while his generals actually fought the war.
So Marcus is doing the group project completely by himself while his partner is out partying.
Worse. When Lucius finally came back, he didn't just bring back bad habits, his legions brought back a pestilence.
Oh, man.
A plague that absolutely devastated Rome. So Marcus is now dealing with a deadbeat partner and a massive pandemic.
And that is not all. The source describes this perfect storm that hit Rome right as Marcus took over. Floods destroyed the grain stores, which led to widespread famine. So you have war, plague, flood, and starvation all hitting at once.
It was a crisis of biblical proportions. And this is where you see Marcus's character shine through that strenuous weariness we talked about.
Yes, the jewels.
The source shares a specific anecdote that I think totally defines him. The treasury was empty. They desperately needed money for the war and to feed the starving populace. So, Marcus sold the imperial jewels.
He literally pawned the crown jewels.
Essentially, yes. Picture this. The Emperor of Rome turning his own palace into an auction house. For 2 months, he sold the golden goblets, his wife's silk robes, the crystals, the art. He stripped his own life bare to save the people.
That is such a powerful image. He's looking at all this luxury and saying, this doesn't matter, duty matters.
Exactly. It shows that for him, the title of emperor wasn't about the perks. It was a burden of duty that he just had to carry.
So he's selling his furniture to fund a war. And speaking of war, that seems to be where he spent most of his time anyway. The source mentions the northern frontier.
Yes, against the Marcomanni, the Quadi, the Sarmatians, endless grinding wars on the borders. He wasn't ruling from some marble room in Rome. He was out in a tent in the mud, leading troops.
There is a wild story in the source about one of these battles, the Thundering Legion. It sounds almost supernatural.
It does. It was 174 AD, fighting the Quadi. The Romans were surrounded, they were dying of thirst, about to be completely wiped out, and suddenly a massive storm breaks.
Out of nowhere.
Thunder, rain, lightning. The lightning strikes the barbarians, terrifying them. And the Romans are saved by the rain. They catch it in their shields to drink.
That is incredibly cinematic. And the source says there was a big debate about who to thank for the storm.
Right. Later Christian writers claimed it was because of the prayers of a legion of Christian soldiers. They claimed that's why they were called the Thundering Legion. But the source points out a quick historical fact check. The title Thundering Legion actually existed before that battle. So the name wasn't new, even if the miracle felt like it to the men on the ground.
Interesting. But the external wars weren't even the only threat. There was betrayal from inside the house. Avidius Cassius. This feels like the emotional climax of his struggles.
This is perhaps the most dramatic personal moment for Marcus. Avidius Cassius was one of his most trusted generals, a man Marcus really relied on.
Here what happens?
Cassius heard a false rumor that Marcus had died in camp, so he immediately declared himself emperor.
High treason.
The highest. But when Marcus found out Cassius was revolting, he didn't fly into a rage. He didn't order a mass execution. He told his troops he hoped to capture Cassius alive so he could pardon him.
Wait.
He wanted to avoid civil war and show mercy.
He wanted to forgive the guy trying to steal his throne. That is almost incomprehensible to me.
It's extreme Stoic discipline. He absolutely refused to let another man's vice dictate his own reaction.
Wow.
But he never got the chance to pardon him. Cassius's own men assassinated him.
Oh.
They cut off his head and brought it to Marcus as a gift.
Ugh. That is a gruesome scene. How did Marcus react to that?
He indignantly refused the gift. He wouldn't even look at the murderers or the head. He was genuinely heartbroken that he was denied the chance to turn an enemy into a friend. He felt robbed of the opportunity for reconciliation.
That is just incredible discipline. But okay, let's unpack this. We have to address the elephant in the room here.
Right.
Because if we just paint Marcus as this perfect saint, we are ignoring a massive dark stain on his record. The source calls it the Great Blot.
The persecution of the Christians.
Yeah, it's really hard to reconcile. This man who preaches kindness, forgiveness, mercy, but under his reign, Christians like Justin and Polycarp were violently martyred. How does the source explain this paradox?
It is a difficult reality to sit with. The source argues that Marcus viewed the Christians purely through the lens of calumny, basically.
Yeah.
Slander and misinformation. He didn't really know what they believed. To him, they just looked like dangerous fanatics who were violently opposed to the state.
So he saw them as a political threat, not really a religious one?
Exactly. He viewed them as a state within a state. You have to remember, he's relying entirely on reports from his advisors.
Right, he's not interviewing them himself.
No. He sees this group of people who refuse to sacrifice to the emperor, who hold secret meetings, who seem to actually welcome death. To a Roman who is totally obsessed with order and civic duty, that looks like a rebel cell.
So in his mind, he's not suppressing the truth. He thinks he's suppressing a riot.
Correct. The source notes that he failed to ensure they had a fair hearing. He just accepted the rumors as fact.
Which is a failure of his own philosophy.
It is. The source even makes a bold claim here. It argues that in this specific regard, the Emperor Trajan was actually better than Marcus Aurelius.
Really?
Yeah, Trajan was more worldly. He realized the Christians weren't a real threat. Marcus the philosopher got it wrong.
That is a sting. But it highlights that even a wise man has major blind spots.
Precisely. And that leads us to the why. How did he keep going through the betrayal, the wars, the plague, and the burden of judging these supposed rebels? He relied on the Stoic system.
Okay, let's get into the system. The source makes a point that for Marcus, philosophy wasn't just schoolwork. It filled the void of religion.
Yes, because Roman religion was highly transactional. You sacrifice a goat, the gods give you good weather. It was a bargain. Marcus needed something much deeper. He needed a framework for his soul.
So let's break down this framework. The source divides it into three parts: physics, logic, and ethics. Let's hit them briefly.
Sure. Physics was his view of the universe. He was a pantheist. He believed the universe itself is God. God isn't a guy sitting on a cloud. God is the whole system.
And us.
Our souls are just little emanations, sparks from that big fire, destined to eventually be reabsorbed.
Okay. And logic.
Logic was about the criterion of truth. It's about testing your impressions. When you see something, is it true? Does it hold fast? Or is it just your flawed opinion?
Which naturally leads to the big one, ethics. This is where the rubber meets the road. And I really want to talk about the doctrine of indifference because this feels like the engine of the whole machine for him.
It absolutely is. To understand Marcus Aurelius, you have to understand indifference.
Now, indifference usually sounds like apathy to a modern ear, like you just don't care about anything.
In modern English, yes.
Okay.
But in Stoicism, it's a technical term. Think of it as three buckets. Bucket one is good, that's virtue, kindness, honesty, courage. Bucket two is bad, that's vice. Cruelty, lying, injustice.
Simple enough, good and bad.
Then there's the third bucket, the indifferent bucket. And this is where Marcus threw everything else.
Everything.
Everything. Health, indifferent. Money, indifferent. Reputation, indifferent. Even his own family's lives.
Wait, hold on. If his son dies, that's indifferent. That sounds sociopathic.
It sounds incredibly harsh, but the distinction is about moral impact. If his son dies, it is tragic, yes. They call it undesirable.
Okay.
But it doesn't make Marcus a bad person. It doesn't ruin his soul. Therefore, it is indifferent to his character.
I see. So indifferent doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It means it doesn't change who I am.
Precisely. He believed the only thing you truly own is your own mind. Everything else, the weather, the plague, the barbarians, is just the scenery you're acting in.
That makes a lot more sense. Now, the source does something really fascinating here to illustrate this. It compares Marcus's meditations to a very famous Christian book, The Imitation of Christ.
This comparison is highly illuminating. Both books aim for self-control. Both say the world is vanity, but the mechanism, the battery power, if you will, is totally different.
How so?
The Roman Marcus relies entirely on self-reliance.
Hmm.
He drills his own soul. He scrutinizes himself. It's all about his own internal strength.
And the Christian.
The Christian relies on grace, on God's help and friendship.
So it's internal power versus external power.
Exactly. And that radically changes how they treat other people. The source says the Roman washes his hands of the offender. If someone insults Marcus, he thinks that's his problem. He's hurting his own soul, not mine.
Like, I'm above this, I'm moving on.
Exactly. But the Christian is taught to sorrow for the offender's malice, to feel pity and sadness for the sin itself. The Roman endures suffering, while the Christian finds virtue in the suffering.
And the ultimate goal is different too, right?
Very different. For Marcus, the goal is just a serene soul in this life, and then nothing. Reabsorption, total loss of individual consciousness.
Whereas for the Christian, it's an afterlife of joy.
Right. Marcus was operating entirely without that hope.
That makes his discipline even more impressive in a way. He was being good purely for the sake of being good, not for some cosmic reward.
He was. It goes back to that mood of strenuous weariness. He was simply doing his duty until the trumpet sounded for retreat.
Well, let's look at his final days, when that trumpet finally did sound. We talked about the wars, but his domestic life wasn't exactly a picnic either.
No, it wasn't. We mentioned his wife earlier, Faustina. There were incredibly nasty rumors in Rome that she was unfaithful. Even rumors that she intrigued with Cassius during the rebellion.
Does the source actually buy that?
The source dismisses it completely. It says there is no real evidence. Marcus loved her dearly. He never suspected her. In his eyes, she was completely faithful.
But then there's the son, Commodus. This feels like the ultimate tragedy of his life.
The tragedy of Commodus. Marcus had several children, but they died young. The only son who survived to adulthood was Commodus.
And he turned out to be
A ferocious and bloodthirsty tyrant, as the source puts it.
talk about undoing your father's life's work.
Completely. Commodus ended the frontier wars with a really hasty peace and basically spent his time back in Rome playing gladiator. He was the anti-Marcus.
So Marcus dies in 980 AD. Where does it happen?
In a military camp. In Pannonia, which is modern-day Central Europe.
Not in his comfortable bed, not surrounded by luxury in the Talus, but in a tent on the freezing frontier.
Fitting, isn't it? The source calls his life a massive paradox. He was a peaceful man who died in a military camp, a family man whose only surviving son became a monster, a philosopher who had to rule the world.
So, bringing this all together, what does this all mean for us? What is the main takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the source puts it beautifully at the end. Marcus didn't try to remodel the world. He wasn't some grand revolutionary. He just tried to do his duty and keep himself pure amidst unimaginable corruption.
And the meditations weren't meant for us to read.
No. They were his private diary. They were the notes of a man trying to bear the burden of duty and the countless annoyances of a busy life. He was writing to himself just to stay sane.
There's a provocative thought at the very end of the source material that really stuck with me. It's about his death. And I think we should end on this because it gives such a human texture to this Stoic statue we've been talking about.
Yes, it's haunting. You have to remember, Marcus's philosophy told him that death was just blankness, reabsorption, no heaven, no reunion with his dead children, just lights out. But Casaubon points to a specific line in the Meditations where Marcus seems to hesitate. He writes, "Thou hast come to land, go out. There also shalt thou find gods."
There also shalt thou find gods.
It's like he's hoping, just for a second, that his cold philosophy was wrong. That maybe, just maybe, this brutal life was a dream. And upon waking upon dying, he might find real gods waiting for him.
It leaves you with this image of the boy nicknamed Most Truthful, growing up to be the loneliest man in the world, writing notes in a tent to keep his soul clean, just groping blindly for something more.
A powerful legacy for a man who really just wanted a quiet life.
Indeed. That's a wrap on our deep dive into the introduction to the Meditations. Thanks for joining us.
Keep exploring the sources.